everyone on this planet, that we are naturally enlightened beings, that we are joyous, happy people. There is light and there is darkness, and at any moment we can choose to live in the light or the darkness. Everything that happens in my life isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. The healing, the deep connecting, have that be the initiator of the relationship. That is the type of work that needs to be done to heal men. Live your life with intention and presence, and trust your intuition, and it'll bring you on the right path.
The Pursuit of Life podcast, episode number 5. We have a special man on board. We have Hogan. It's great to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me, Justin. I've really been looking forward to this all week. Glad to be in front of you today.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. So the reason why I started this podcast because I believe in the message in Pursuit of Light so freaking much. And it's basically this idea of cultivating the light and finding the love from within ourselves, and then being able to use that to share the love, share the light to the people around you. And Cameron, I feel like you're someone who embodies this mantra, the pursuit of light. And I think you're just someone who found the light and the love from within. And now, through the work that you're doing, you're really just sharing this message of love to everyone around you. And it's definitely made an impact in my life. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, my friend. I'm simply just doing the best I can as a fellow human being to love myself and therefore love the world around me.
Yeah, amazing. Well, there's so many jumping off points we can go from here, but you know, and your journey is one that deserves, a lot of just people to hear all about it. And I wanted to start off with, this quote I actually came across recently, which kind of says that personal development ultimately leads to a spiritual life. I want to ask what's your take on that?
I completely agree. You
Mm,
know, I've been into personal development, I think, ever since I was about 12, 13. I really started to read all the books, the Rich Dad Poor Dad, the How to Influence Influence People. And oftentimes it started with the business lens because I just want to make money. I wanted to be successful in that way. And then I realized, thankfully, that was kind of perfect timing for the internet, where a lot of influencers were starting to post on YouTube, and entrepreneurs were just showing their ways of life. And naturally, I feel like I got a pretty good grasp on what it would take to do well for myself when it came to business, do well for myself when it came to health, do well for myself when it came to relationships. But to be honest with you, it felt kind of surface level. I felt like there must have been more. And so I think naturally on all of our personal development journeys, it turns into us, instead of just trying to change the external, start to go internal and ask ourselves the questions our entire lives we've been afraid to ask or have been avoiding. And that's where all the work truly lies. And the more you go down that path, the more you realize that who you are on the inside dictates who you are on the outside, and dictates how people interact with you on the outside. And so it's actually, I think, the deeper work, the real work, the inner work that we're all striving for, but many of us have never been taught. And so I would just like to help a lot of people better understand why they do what they do, and to make sure they're living their life with full intentionality, and that whatever they're striving for, that's worthwhile and come from a place of love instead of fear. And so naturally along my personal development journey, I turned a lot more spiritual. And I think that's oftentimes what I help people out with now.
mhm.
A lot of people come to me wanting some of the same things I have externally, but every single time I just bring them onto the inner work and have those necessary conversations they need to have with themselves and with the world around them to feel free, to feel themselves.
Man, that's amazing. Yeah, I think, you know, for people who aren't really sure of who you are, I wanted to ask, where did all of this start? And what did you learn from everything that you've done?
Where all this started, oh man, I've been very fortunate. I have incredible parents. Both of my parents are, I would say, well known in the community I grew up in. They're both doctors, but they're both, my dad's a chiropractor, mom's a dentist. Both had this kind of holistic way of looking at life. And thankfully, at the dinner table every night, there was no topic that we could not talk about. In most families, you can't talk about money, can't talk about
Yeah.
politics, can't talk about religion. That was not the case in my family. We talked about all those incredibly open. And one thing my dad in particular did was, I think, really instill in me of why were we taught this? Why do we believe that? He always pushed me to go that extra layer into why we do what we do. And just having that mindset every single night at the dinner table and then going to school the next day, be able to question, why are they teaching us this?
Mhm.
Why do I have to sit in this weird chair for 8 hours a day around people I don't really like? And so really just made me question a lot of things, set me up for a life that I knew was destined to be different from most. And thankfully, when you start asking questions, answers will start being revealed to you. And it turned into something pretty beautiful over the period of time where my parents just gave me permission to be myself and do something different. Thankfully, I never really felt the pressure from them to fit in with the rest of the people or to have a certain job or be a certain way just because our other families in the neighborhood are doing that.
Mhm.
They gave me so much freedom to explore my own curiosity, and they empowered me to do so. And so I think that was the start. And then naturally, as we go upon society, as we go to the grocery store, as we go to the bank, as we just do our normal things, when you have that kind of lens of curiosity, you'll often find that the way people are living, you may not want to live. And so I just finally, over these past handful of years, have given myself permission to live a different life. And it has just been the greatest life I could ever imagine. And I really, really enjoy doing things from a curious perspective, no matter how different that may be from the average person, even if it goes against the grain. So I would say it started, to answer your question, it started with my parents. And they really instilled with me that it's okay to be different. And I feel in great debt to them. I love them so much. And it's something I will definitely have instilled in my kids one day.
Yeah. If you were to describe, in a word or a phrase, how you're feeling right now and with the life that you're living, like how would you describe it?
Oh, man. In one word, first word that comes to mind, I would say joyous. I
Ah,
experienced a lot of moments of joy. Thankfully, recently I was just around a lot of old high school buddies. I went to a wedding this past weekend for one of them, and they asked me, what's life like? And I explained to them, imagine being in like a self-driving car, like in a Tesla
mhm.
that's going 100 miles per hour, and you're in the driver's seat, technically, but you're not the one controlling where you're going. But everywhere you're going, like the direction, the destination you see yourself going down is the exact things you've always known to be true of what you actually want. It feels so right, but it's going fast. It's going really fast. You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like all the blessings are coming to you,
Mhm.
coming to me. The things I've always wanted my entire life when it comes to relationships, when it comes to business, when it comes to creativity, but it's all happening at once. And it's a unique type of experience because I know that I'm having to become a higher version of myself that's capable of handling all these things that are coming my way. But I'm just enjoying the process, man. Enjoying life for what it is. And I've just realized recently that the world is the external world just reflects our internal world. And so the more I focus on making sure that I am happy, that I'm present, that I'm at peace, the external world reflects that. And that's what's bringing up so much joy. So to answer your question, I would say it's joyful.
Wow. For people listening that might be they might feel maybe like a lower state of emotions. They may feel, be depressed, miserable. How can someone get to that? And you mentioned doing the inner work. So can you kind of talk us through what's doing the inner work like and how can one be as joyful as you right now?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. To be honest with you, Justin, I really feel as if everyone on this planet is much more powerful than they can ever imagine. That we are naturally enlightened beings, that we are joyous, happy people. But society, as we know it, has conditioned us to not be. And so for someone to become what they already are, to remember what they already are, and embody who they already are, they need to slowly strip away the conditioning that's been put in front of them. And so a tangible way to do this is the exact program that I believe you found me on, which is Solitude 60, that I've been doing on my social media for quite a while. And basically, it's incredibly simple. It's absolutely free. It's actually the most simple thing you can do. You just sit down on the couch, on the bed, whatever it is, with no distractions, just you and your thoughts and emotions for 60 minutes a day for 60 days straight. And the reason why it's 60 minutes is because it has a dramatic effect in comparison to 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or half an hour. Because when you're sitting down for 60 minutes, that monkey mind that we all have of, oh, I got to write that email, I got to talk to that person, I got to ace this final exam coming up, I got to do all these things. That mind thankfully starts to get quieter. And then the real thoughts, the real feelings that we've been hiding our entire life or distracting ourselves from our entire life begin to come to the surface. And sometimes that's just asking, like, hey, why do I eat this type of food? Why do I have this relationship with my father? Why do I do this instead of that? And you'll start to question your own behavior. And oftentimes you'll get answers of what it's going to take to overcome or live a life more aligned that embodies more love and peace and enlightenment. And so, to be honest with you, I believe all the answers are within. And all we have to do is intentionally strip away our conditioning by just sitting in a room alone with our own thoughts. And in doing so, Justin, the great news is that the other voice in our head, oftentimes that have been silenced by much of society, is our intuition. And that intuition is going to put us on the right path. And oftentimes it's going to mean doing things that feel confronting and uncomfortable. But of course, that's what it's going to take to change your lives. We're going to have to do things we've never done before. And so in my life, that came down to conversations with others, conversations with my father, conversations with close friends, childhood friends, and just telling them the truth on how I feel, how my life is going, any resentment or judgment I've had towards them, or any that I felt they've had towards me. And then just coming clean with that. And naturally, that has allowed me to just feel more free. It's like I feel like a huge monkey that was on my back my entire life. I didn't know was there, was just taken off. And I really believe, I'm not 100% perfect by any means. I still have some things and probably some conversations need to be had. But I've reached a point where a lot of the major work has been done. And so naturally, I am closer to my natural state of being, of just being joyful, peaceful, and having moments of enlightenment. And so when we strengthen our intuition, naturally, of course, it'll lead us to have these conversations, but also it'll make us question why we distract ourselves so much with TV, with Netflix, with our phone, with anything that we're currently doing. And over time, if you do it consistently, like Solitude 60, it'll become incredibly hard to keep those distractions up because you realize there's no better feeling in the world than just sitting alone with yourself and your thoughts. And the other thing that come close to that is loving connections with others. And when you now feel as those are the best things that life has to offer, naturally, you'll want more experiences like that in your life. And so everything else, all distractions will fall to the wayside. And so I live a life now where I have parameters on what I can watch, what I can do, whatever it is, because I know that it'll lower my state of being and create more judgment for the world, create more judgment for myself. And I don't want that. And so now I feel like I'm really starting to get in the flow of the life I want to live. And yeah, I recommend it for everyone and everything. It's the reason why we're here.
Yep, you heard it from him. Solitude 60. Yeah, I love the statement that you said that we are naturally loving beings and society has conditioned us to feel that the norm is to feel lower states of emotion. Why do you think that society puts us in a state of fear and low levels of, I guess, consciousness?
That's a fantastic question. I want to bring it to a point real quick where I've had a few times where friends and family have become mad at me because I'll say statements like, this world is perfect.
Mhm.
and they look at me and they're like, "What are you talking about? Do you not see all the injustices going on in the Middle East or right here in your hometown? Like, how can you say the world is perfect?"
Yeah.
And then I rephrased them like, "No, no, this world is perfectly balanced between the light and the dark."
Wow.
And that's part, if we think this entire life is a video game or simulation, that's part of the game, to
Mhm.
understand that there is light and there is darkness, and at any moment we can choose to live in the light or the darkness. And sadly, of the past, I think, handful of centuries, the dark has consumed a lot of people. That's why people are walking around anxious, depressed, living in the mind, and seeing the light through the world through a negative lens. And so there are probably forces at play we don't understand, and that's okay. All I know is that any human at any given time can choose the light, can choose whether you want to call it God or the truth or love. We can choose that in any given moment. And so for me, despite all of the tragedies taking place in the world, I see it as an incredible chance for growth for all of us. And I believe it is possible in our lifetimes to alleviate the far majority of suffering that's taking place. And we do so by individually controlling our own lives with the only person we can control, and
Mhm.
living our life in a way that is aligned with our intuition that'll bring us closer to light. So to answer your question, I'm not sure why darkness exists, but I know that we don't have to participate in it. We have the free will not to.
Mhm.
And that's what makes this a video game of a life great.
Yeah. How did David R. Hawkins' The Map of Consciousness explained play into your life?
Oh man. Yeah, that's been a
Uh,
huge book for me,
yeah.
to be honest. Like Chelsea Justin, recently I've taken, I guess you want to call it sabbatical, whatever it is, away from all podcasts, books, audiobooks, music for the most part, simply
Mhm.
because I just love silence, even in the car or going on a walk, whatever it is. But the
Yeah.
one book that I've kept by my side is the book you're talking about, Map of Consciousness Explained by David R. Hawkins. Simply because my entire life I've asked so many questions about people, about human nature,
Mhm.
and I've had all these hypotheses about why we act the way we do. And then I read the Map of Consciousness as if it put all of those understandings of the world into the 250 plus pages, whatever it is. And it showed me why people act the way they do, and showed me that it's all about energy. It's all about a vibration, and
Yeah.
that at any moment we can empower ourselves through how we choose to perceive the world to raise our vibration. And so that book has served as an incredible map or scale for me to understand myself and what actions and thoughts I'm participating in that would keep me lower, and what I must do to become higher if I'd like. And so overall, Justin, it has been one of my favorite books of all time. It's probably been my most
Yeah.
recommended book, maybe besides the Four Agreements, which I absolutely love also. But yeah, I'd recommend it to everyone. I think if any of you are fascinated by humans and human nature, I think it should be a must read.
I completely agree. Like I've also gotten into it and it's definitely changed a lot of how I see the world and how we can, I guess, actively participate it to make to find our light from within and just really be able to project that outwards. And I think
Yeah,
it has just been a huge impact in my life as well as your life, and hopefully to many
definitely.
others as well.
Yeah, Justin, one question I
Yeah.
want to ask for you, like after reading that book or maybe just consuming my content or content of others, have you made any shifts in your own life, whether it's habits or practices or anything to bring you closer to the light?
Oh man, I think partially I started the podcast because of this book, because I was able to see myself as a facilitator for human connection. And now when I meet a human, when I interact with them, I try my best to hold space for them. I try to show love to them. And I think this book has actively raise my awareness of not just like of my own world, but of other people and how I can best serve them. So man, yeah, it has played a huge role, man.
Incredible. I'm so happy for you, brother.
Yeah. And speaking on the topic of, showing love for yourself and others, like how did life present you in ways that you wouldn't have noticed if you weren't operating out of love?
Oh man. I think life has dramatically changed because I now choose every single day to operate from a place of love. And how I've been able to make this shift, and this shift is what has made all the difference in the world, is understanding that everything that happens in my life isn't happening to me, it's happening for me.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so let me give you an example. This past weekend, I hardly ever travel, but this weekend I went from my home, well, not my hometown, but where I'm currently living in Austin to Utah. And there were multiple delays. I missed my first flight for the first time ever. I
Oh,
lost my luggage on the plane. Like everything you could have imagined that happened, quote unquote, wrong happened.
yeah.
And it would have been incredibly easy for me to be like, why is this happening to me? Why is this plane late? Oh, it's gonna mess up my day here. I'm gonna have to not get into the town until 1 a.m. Like it's gonna do all this. If that means everything's happening to me, to me, to me. But then I caught myself. I'm like, what was all happening for me? Like, actually, the reason why I lost my luggage because I was so distracted because I was having such an in-depth, deep conversation with this girl sitting next to me who's from Qatar. And we, of course, like most conversations, it ended in consciousness and spirituality. I'm like, I really enjoyed that. Like, I don't know the impact that had on her life. And that was probably worth monetarily more than any amount of money that had in that luggage suitcase of clothes and shoes, whatever it is. Like, that
Mhm.
happened for me. I really, really enjoyed that. And also, I had this delay where I'm like, for the first time in weeks or months, I've had time alone to myself and just relax, get some work done on the computer. I had some good candy. I haven't candy forever. That's a good candy, a little gift shop thing
Yeah.
they had going on there, convenience store. And I was just sitting there enjoying the present moment. And I may not have had that if everything happened perfectly. So what I did is I realized, oh my gosh, this whole weekend happened for me.
Mhm.
Everything that went wrong, quote unquote, happened for me. And so when you see that, when you see yourself stuck in traffic, when you see yourself doing all these other things on a daily basis, whether they're small, like the one that's happened to me this past weekend, or big when it comes to people doing something wrong to you, as soon as we can understand it's happening for us, we have no choice but to live out of love and empathy for ourselves and for others. And so making that shift, which has allowed me to embody the lens of love, allows me to see everything happening for me. And when you look at life through that lens, everything feels right.
Mhm.
Everything feels like, of course that happened. Of course that happened. And of course, we just touched on the quote unquote more undesirable things. But every single day, it feels my days feel like little miracles are taking place every hour that I'm like, of
Oh,
course that happened.
yeah.
You know, whether it was, I've really been missing my dogs recently, and I went on a walk and saw a golden doodle just like the one I have back at home. And like, if I would have left my house 2 minutes earlier, I would not have come in contact with that person. Of course,
Wow.
I left at the exact same time I
Yeah.
did. And of course, it fueled my day to see these dogs that I love so much. Like every little thing, Justin, now feels like a little miracle, a little coincidence that can't even be coincidence happening. And when you look at life through that lens, it's hard to ever be angry or mad
Yeah.
or pissed off, whatever it is. And it's so beautiful, and I recommend it to everyone.
Yeah. Your life is like such a blessing, man. And once we're aware of this, like every day, every moment's a miracle. And dude, that is like the best life we can possibly ever experience. Yeah. And you mentioned the topic of, frustration, because I think I saw a Twitter post that you posted once. It was called "We only become happy once we embrace being angry." And I wanted to ask, why do we have to embrace these negative emotions if we want to be happy?
Yeah. Oh man, it's a great question. I think it's possible for every emotion to be a desirable emotion. Because throughout life, there are probably going to be someone or something that makes us a little bit angry. I'm not Buddha. I'm not perfect. I'm not Jesus Christ, whatever it is, I'm still
Yeah.
human. And if I can have that anger and express it in a way that's healthy, where I'm not, hurting anyone or, cussing people out, whatever it is, if I can do so by myself or around people that I love and trust that can hold that container for me, and I go punch a pillow or yell or scream or just say, I'm feeling really angry right now, and allow that emotion, also known as energy in motion, to flow through me, that allows it from building up in my chest. Because what's happening a lot nowadays when we see all the tragic things going on, oftentimes it's guilt, shame, anger, desire, all these undesirable emotions that have not been felt, that are pretty much in like this cup in our hearts. And it's not a good cup. It's not a cup of coffee. It's a cup
Yeah.
of poison. And there will come a time when that cup overflows. And that's when you see people do atrocities in this world. And so, if I can have the loving awareness that it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to feel shame and guilt sometimes, and I wrap that angry present in wrapping paper of loving awareness, and I love myself, I love this part of myself that's angry, that now changes something that was a low vibrational emotion and immediately brings me back up to love, because I have loving awareness around that emotion and I forgive myself. I love this part of me. And now what used to drag me down, we used to drag all this down, is now bringing us higher. Because every time you go
Mm.
quote unquote down, you can swoop up to go higher on the map of consciousness if you so please. And so that's what I meant by that. People who don't allow themselves to be angry and said, I always have to be happy, I always have to do this and that. I just don't think that's possible. I don't think the
Yeah.
human experience is designed or engineered to be that way. And
Mhm.
so if we can embrace when we're sad, especially sadness, but anger, all these other things, like that's what is actually the key to us maintaining a predominant state or predominant emotion of something more desirable,
Mm.
like happiness, love, joy, and peace.
Yeah. It reminds me of, the road quote, which kind of says most men live lives of quiet desperation. It's like we sometimes don't want the world to see all these negative emotions that we're experiencing, so we kind of bottle it up inside us. And it's like a volcano. Once it gets too full, it erupts, and then as you mentioned, like all these atrocities that the world is seeing, maybe because of this eruption, because we don't take the time to hold space for those emotions and see it in a form of love. So I think that's like a brilliant observation that you pointed out. Yeah, it kind of reminds me, I've always had this, yes, this feeling of like this public versus private persona. And it seems like that for most of my life, this public self, that I don't want to show any negative emotion. So, people always see me as, a pretty friendly guy who never gets angry. But on the private side of my life, sometimes I bottle up all these emotions, and sometimes it takes form in, you know, lashing out at parents or to loved ones. And, you know, I think it's because that I was bottling up all these emotions for such a long time. I think that's why these things happen. And I think, yeah, that observation you pointed out was really brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I think that's exactly what so many people are experiencing.
Yeah.
They bottle up these emotions, and that's what has there be a difference between the person they are inside their bedroom and a person they have to be around their parents and the person they have to
Yeah.
be around in the world, because we think some things are okay and some things aren't. And so that's why oftentimes, especially me who used to identify being an introvert, I only had so much social battery where I can
Mhm.
act this certain way around people because it wasn't truly me.
Yeah.
And that's why at the end of the day, we're like, oh, I'm tired of wearing this mask for the most part. And it's okay to have that. That's what society's told us we must do. That's part of the conditioning. But I promise you, it is so freeing. And I'm not perfect at this, but I've gotten a lot better, thankfully. It is so freeing knowing that I can be the same person when I'm alone here in my apartment that I can be on stage, public speaking something,
Mhm.
or I can be
Yeah.
talking to my parents or meeting someone important, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And to be honest with you, that's what people love the most.
Right.
Like for some reason, I think we are so much more in our feelings than we believe. Like we try to rationalize all our feelings, but we know immediately whether we like people or not. We try to justify or rationalize in our head why we do or do not like them. You know, whether it's like, I don't like their haircut, I don't like how they acted there, I don't like it. It's all a
Yeah.
feeling. It's not about that at all, you know? And people can feel authenticity. They can feel the truth. And so when is someone is being the exact same to them in public as they would be alone, they feel that and they love that.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the people that society look up to and genuinely love are the people that are the most real.
Yeah.
And once I learned that, I'm like, oh, it's my permission to just be real all the time to everyone.
Yeah.
And it's so freeing and it's a process. And so part of it's like forgiving ourselves for having two faces or four faces, whatever it is, like our masks that we wear. And just understanding like it's so worth it to just not wear the mask at all. But that's a, like you're probably experiencing right now. It's a slow process, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think what I really appreciate you doing is, what you did in Bali and what you did doing right now in Austin is the men's group, which you've been leading for, quite some time now. And the question I have for you is, why is it so hard for men to be vulnerable? Because I feel like sometimes men are portrayed as, tough warriors, don't show emotions, just battled through everything. But sometimes our greatest asset, I think, as you mentioned, is our vulnerability and being authentic. Like, why is it so hard to do that?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't believe it was in the past. A lot of people think that
Mm.
it was like that forever, and then this is how men are and have always been. I don't believe that to be the case. I think for the far majority of history, whether we were primates or a little bit more evolved than that, we're always around other men. At the beginning, we were hunting animals all day or protecting the tribe through war, whatever it was. And then as time went on, we fought wars. We went off for months, years away from our families with other men in the community to hold ground or to do something that would dramatically benefit our community. But thankfully, whatever struggle we were going through, whether it was incredibly cold weather or we lost the guy next to us that was fighting, he was killed and we weren't, or he starved and we didn't. We had a group of men that were suffering collectively and suffering together. And every single night, multiple times a day, actually, they had times where they're hanging around by the campfire and they're talking. And they're probably like, this really sucks, doesn't it? Like, we're out here in the cold. Half of us are dead. The other half are about to freeze to death. We have no food. Like, this really sucks, doesn't it? And everyone's like, yeah, it does. And having that camaraderie through suffering helps us heal from it. As we all kind of know, if we kind of speak into reality what we're experiencing, it helps a little bit, brings a little
Yeah.
more awareness to it. That's just us kind of being alone or with a therapist. Imagine saying that amongst a group of guys who are also going through everything you're going through. It feels healing. It feels incredibly healing.
Yeah.
But because of the past few hundred years, especially the past handful of decades, men, adults have removed themselves from these type of camaraderie, friendships, and brotherhoods. They don't have anyone to talk to or to share or understand that other people are also going through these things. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build brotherhood not based off of the Dallas Cowboys or like drinking a certain brand of beer or
Yeah.
whatever it is like most friends are now built off of for adults or young men. I'm trying to build it off real conversations. And so right now with the men's circle, that's every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock here in Austin. Um, 8 to 12 men get together and we just talk about whatever's on their mind and hearts. And for some people, like I remember one time it was like, one guy was like, I got a really bad haircut. I don't like the way it looks. Like it can be very light like that. And they can also
Yeah.
go incredibly heavy. Multiple people in the family have passed away or terrible things that they have done, not only been the victims of, but the perpetrators of. So it's an entire spectrum of people and what they're currently going through. But what we realize is that whatever someone is currently going through, someone else in that group, despite it only being like 8 men usually, someone else is either currently going through that exact same thing or have already gone through it months ago, years ago. And so, what this does, just like war used to back in the day, is it realize that we're not alone in this
Mm.
because men have been so isolated, realize we think we're the only ones suffering. We're the only ones going through these terrible things, or having to make these hard decisions, or just have an immense amount of responsibility of wife, kids, this, taxes, whatever, all these stuff. But we're not alone. We can get through this together. And so when we mixture those hard conversations where they feel as if they can have the freedom to express whatever comes up, they have the freedom to be angry, they have the freedom to be sad, and the freedom to cry in front of their other brothers, and they'll be met with nothing but love and understanding. That gives people permission to heal and permission to change. And then on top of that, the next weekend we all go cook steaks and barbecue and play soccer and volleyball and we invite the families, invite girlfriends, whatever it is. We have a good time. We mix the healing, the deep connecting, have that be the initiator of the relationship, and then build a holistic, fun life around that, mission-driven, fun life around that. That is the type of work that needs to be done to heal men. And if we heal men, we automatically heal women.
Mm.
And also, if we heal women, we automatically heal men, which is great. But I see this as the solution to the far majority of the problems in today's society that's being caused by hurt men, men that have not been able to empty that cup of poison that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And this is a solution. And so I'm going to build this. Oh, I got a thumbs up there on Zoom.
Oh.
But I'm going to build this starting off with it's only been a handful of weeks, starting off with just a few people here in Austin. I'm expanding across the entire city, multiple hosts, multiple leaders, hopefully serving hundreds, if not thousands of men
Yeah.
in the next few years, and then expand it nationwide, and then hopefully around other countries. But this is the way that we build brotherhood. This is the way that we heal the world, one man at a time.
Yeah, man, I think you're truly onto something special here. And man, like, how has Austin played a part in shaping you as an individual and being able to connect with people? I've heard from like people around living in Austin saying how it's been a special place that they've never experienced in any other city around the world. So I want to ask, what are your thoughts on Austin?
When it comes to how Austin has changed me, man, I've just been so incredibly grateful. To be honest with you, it all happened in perfect timing. I think I did a lot of my own growth and work when I was back in Bali, which I lived in for about 2 years. And that allowed me to really step my foot into this inner work, and just understand who I am and what I'm here to do on this planet, and to be fully okay with me being myself and being completely different from the far majority of people my age. And I knew I had to be here for some reason. And the moment I booked that flight or made that drive, I knew something was about to change. And when I got here, although the first few weeks were interesting, just getting used to being back in America and getting used to finding my way, finding an apartment, doing all that in the
Mhm.
big city. After that, I feel like I just hit the ground running and I fully embraced letting go of so much control that I needed in my life prior and just letting life come to me the way it needed to. And thankfully, I just started to meet the right people. I started to go on a retreat by Danny Miranda, who
Yeah.
I believe that retreat itself changed my life. And now, thankfully, Danny and I are good friends. And then immediately, I found romantically, probably the person I'm going to end up marrying the next handful of months or year. I have a great friend group. I now have a thriving business. And to be honest with you, Justin, I think it's finally because I gave myself permission to be different. I've gave myself permission to have the conversation with my parents that I've been meaning to have for years. I gave myself permission to live a life that just embodies the practices needed to maintain a high vibration. And naturally, everything, and I mean everything, has been attracted to me. Everything I've ever wanted. And so it's just incredible. And now, thankfully, I'm able to, whether through its podcast or other bouts of media, I'm able to share what has happened and how others can do the same.
Yeah. It's like you are what you attract. And it seems like, by doing all that self work you did back in Bali, and then once you came to us and it's all like it all came to you because you were ready. And the universe prepared you for this moment and now you're living, the
Yeah,
greatest life ever.
most definitely. I do my best. Yeah, I try to tell the greatest story ever told, But to be honest with you, Justin, one thing that's really hard for me is now that I was making those big changes in my life, it was hard to find friends that felt the same way. Like I was no longer
Yeah.
drinking. I was, kind of expecting more for myself and therefore expecting more of the world around me. And people in the past may not have fit that mold, which is
Yeah.
okay. And I still have a lot of love for them. But I realized like I need to be at peace with potentially a part of my life, not really having that many friends.
Mm.
And I think there was a period in my life where, although I maintain contact with a few people that I see or talk to once a month, majority of my time is spent alone and embracing that and allowing myself to evolve in that alone time. And then thankfully, that alone time persisted in Austin, where I feel like there are so many people on that same path. And I just attract the right people at the right time. And
Yeah.
then now my entire friend group are all filled with people that I deeply look up to. And they're oftentimes in the same business that I am and doing very similar work and about this consciousness lifestyle. And it all just worked out perfectly. But it happened because I was willing to be alone for a little bit. I made peace with not being understood for a period of my life. And naturally, wherever your good friends are, that's what makes the place home.
Yeah.
And so thankfully that's here in Austin with an amazing place and beautiful nature and big city and all that. But if it happened in the middle of Ohio, then so be it. It's the people that make the difference. And that's what's been a huge,
Yeah.
huge changer for my Austin experience.
Yeah. You were talking how your intuition kind of told you that you needed to be back in America when you're in Bali. And you said that God's voice is through the intuition. Could you further elaborate on that?
Yeah, most definitely. I think
Yeah.
we have two voices in our head, and all the distractions, all the conditioning that we have plays into one voice. That's the ego.
Mhm.
Ego itself is just trying to keep us safe. So we have to have love for that ego. But it's telling
Yeah.
us who we need to be, what we need to have, what we need to do to be worthy of love and to be safe. The problem is, it's not right because society around us has said to be love, to be safe, to do these things, you have to achieve this, you have to do this. But that's not the case at all. We already are all those things we've been chasing our entire life. We already
Yeah.
are love. At any moment, we can choose to give ourselves love, which is a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, but that's definitely the case. But like I was saying, that voice is the ego that's constantly in our mind. It's constantly kind of driving us a little bit crazy. It's a reason for all anxiety and depression in the world. That is one of the voices. Then there's also a oftentimes quieter, more subtle voice that refuses to interrupt the ego.
Mhm.
It is the calm, more gentle voice. And that is our intuition. And that only comes up through silence and through feeling one's emotions. But that intuitive voice, for some reason, I have a feeling it's the voice of God. Because every time I listen to that intuition, it never steers me wrong. It always brings me closer to the light. My life gets significantly better. And I'm like, who or what would have that knowing of the universe
Yeah.
if it's not the universe itself or God? And so, just logically, that's what I think the answer is. And it just feels right too. Not saying I am God, not saying you are God, but I think we all have kind of like a cell phone in our gut, in our stomach, that at any moment we can take off the silent or do not disturb mode that it's on for most people, and we can choose to listen to it.
Yeah.
And if we just listen to that perfect navigation system, we'll be driven in the right direction in our life, which is, I think, quite beautiful.
Yeah. How did you come to find God, and what's your image of God? Do you think he's like some being up in the sky, or is it more like obscure, I guess?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not sure exactly what God is. How I was able to find God, thankfully in Bali, I was kind of meeting the right people at the right time. And despite growing up
Yeah.
agnostic and not open to God, but not necessarily a hardcore believer that a God exists and definitely was following a religion. But I had some experiences in Bali, somewhere just through meditation and breathwork, and also somewhere like in psychedelic ceremonies where, especially on mushrooms or psilocybin, allowed me to have experiences where I felt as if I was face to face with God.
Mhm.
And in those moments, of course, my eyes closed, but just a feeling that I had or a vision that I had, God looked like a big ball of white light. And, but at that same time, I had the inner knowing that God is all of us. Like God is everything, everywhere at the same time, which is the ultimate like mind fuck if you think about it.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? And
Yeah.
that means there's God in every person, whether we think they are good people or bad people. There's God in everything. And it's just so much more complex than we ever could imagine.
Yeah.
And so all I know is, man, there's God within all of us. And the more we step closer to the light, which is another word for God, I believe, the better our life gets, the more we enjoy this human experience, the more what we're doing here feels right. And so all I know is that visually, I've seen a ball of light, but that ball of light is in is within all of us.
Wow.
And so I'm not sure if that answer made this question any simpler for people because that's a lot. Because I still don't know what God really is, but I do know that there's something out there beyond what my mind can grasp and understand. And I do know when I release and let go and allow whatever is out there to guide me to the next step of my life, the more love and the more success I have.
Mm.
And so I'm just going to keep down that path wherever it takes me.
Yeah. I think he also mentioned that like you believe that there can be a possibility of heaven on earth. Could you kind of go deeper into that?
Oh, these are fantastic questions, Justin.
Yeah.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I think it's part of the game. I think a lot of modern religions and rightfully so see all the suffering going on in the world today and believe there's a heaven after this life. After we pass away, we're going to go somewhere up in the clouds and it's going to be perfect. And I understand why they believe that. And I think it serves a lot of people to believe that.
Mhm.
But to be honest with you, Justin, when I think about it, I think we all know people that may have had very similar situations, whether brother, sister, or twins potentially, or very similar ways of life. But for some reason, one is incredibly optimistic and genuinely happy, and the other is pessimistic, depressed, and miserable. But they both had very similar lives.
Mhm.
So the difference is how they perceived it. And I believe that's all life really is. It's a perception. And so I'm telling you, Justin, there's something weird that I'm still trying to better understand. But the more I live my life closer to the light, the more I live in a way that feels right. I'm doing right by my body. I'm doing right by my friends, my family, by my mind. The less darkness I see in the world.
Mm.
Like I love Austin so much because of the state of mind I am currently in while living in Austin, where the people living right above me in this apartment complex or are walking right by us right now, they may have a complete different feeling on Austin. To them,
Yeah.
Austin is hell, but to me, Austin is heaven. And I believe that's because our external world is solely dictated upon our internal world.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I have a filter on life right now where I only see joyful, positive, happy things because I choose to perceive them that way. And some may call it ignorance, but also like if you're listening to the news every single day and you're pessimistic,
Yeah.
you're also being ignorant towards the great things going on in life.
It's true.
Like, is it ignorance
Yeah.
if it's both ways? Like, we both just
Mhm.
have different versions of this current reality. And so the moments that I believe I've touched a little bit of enlightenment, which I think we're all capable of. I don't think I'm there as my natural state of being, but I know I've had glimpses of it. This earth feels like heaven. And I wish that for everyone to experience that. I really believe that individually we can alleviate our own suffering. And when we alleviate our own suffering, what's left? Only good things. Exactly what they have always described heaven as. And that can happen here, today, now, wherever you are. And so, yeah, man, I think heaven and hell are both here on earth with us right now.
Mm.
And at any moment, we can choose which one we want to live in.
Wow. What you just said, it just sent chills over my body. I think that was such a deep and profound statement. Yeah, man, it's all about our perception, and we can choose to see world as hell, or we can choose to see world as heaven, and and based on what we perceive, it literally dictates our entire life and our actions, our thoughts, our beliefs. So I think, yeah, what you just said is a deeply powerful statement.
Thank you, my friend. Yeah, it's quite
Yeah.
beautiful because when we fully transition to what we talked about earlier, when it comes to most people being at, life happens to me, and then we shift it to life happens for me, which we see everything is, conspiring in our favor as opposed to against us. The next level of that, when we fully embrace everything happening for us, is when things begin to happen through us. And that's when it
Mhm.
feels like heaven on earth because everything you've ever wanted can happen at the snap of a finger. We're very close to it. And then you realize, oh, okay, this video game is about to get real fun.
Yeah.
And that's when one can choose to make their own version of heaven if they so please.
Mhm.
And it's so cool because, like,
Yeah.
despite what conditioning has told us, that isn't just for the rich people. It isn't just for, people that are blessed to be brought into a good family. It's for all of us. We're all capable of it at any moment. And it
Yeah.
makes this video game so much fun.
Yeah. Like we each individual, we possess more power to dictate our lives than we might have previously thought. And that's once you come to that realization, it's like, whoa, so many things can happen now, you know? Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I want to pivot to a tweet that you posted recently, which was, I really loved it. It's like, if you lived your life without giving into fear, I promise you that money will never be a problem. And that kind of like, it's almost screwed my mind because, growing up in, I guess, in the middle class family, money was something that was so important to us, money, because we needed money for everything. And, some of us work all our lives just to chase money. And I wanted to ask, why do people have such fears around money? And what would happen if we let go of these fears?
Yeah. It's unique and it's something I'm really trying to better understand how to best articulate
Yeah.
because this is something I've deeply felt the past few years. And thankfully, I've been blessed. My parents were, I would say, upper middle class. They're doctors. And so thankfully, I've never lived in a family that was living paycheck to paycheck or struggled to find the next meal. which I know many people are around the world. Um, but when I see how this world or universe plays out, I've realized is that money is a tool oftentimes to keep people scarce or in fear, because we are told that it's the opposite of abundant, that is scarce, that there's a limited amount, and we need to work our butt off to achieve it. But that also goes against logic. Like a few years ago, they printed $6 trillion. 6 trillion. That's a lot of money. You don't think we have the option to grab a few million out of that if we so please?
Yeah.
We can't do that. Come on. Like it's just a tool that actually doesn't exist. It's just a piece of paper that we've all agreed to use. It actually, it is the ultimate tool utilized to keep us in survival mode, to keep us in fear. As you can see, to keep us in anger. But one thing I've realized is when I live my life in a way where I look at money as it is, as an abundant tool, and I give freely, when I see people in need, especially here in Austin, I give freely. I spend mostly freely. I also receive it freely.
Wow.
Because how you give is how you will receive. And so my dad taught me this one thing a while back when I was very young. And I'm so grateful for him for doing so. And it was basically, I wish I had some dollar bills here, make it a lot easier. But basically, he showed me that you can't give money to a hand that's closed. And a hand that's closed can't also give money to others.
Yeah.
So if your hand is open, you're willing to receive and you're also willing to give. And so I'm trying to teach people, let's keep that hand open. Let's do what feels right. Let's give money when we feel right. You know, sometimes that's a homeless man on the side of this road. Sometimes it's a charity. That's sometimes spending money on new shoes for us or whatever it is. And then we live life with that abundance. People can feel it.
Yeah.
People can feel it. They can feel the difference. If you've ever been around a very rich person who understands this concept, you just understand he's playing a different game. And for some reason, they're attracting different deals, different opportunities their way that even another rich person right next to him can't, because of the feeling he gives off around money. But when you, like I said, give abundantly, you will receive abundantly. And I've had this experiment for quite a while, and it's going very well.
Wow.
And I'm going to probably, even though it's kind of odd, publicizing money and stuff like that, I think it's a very gray area because of how people may perceive it. But to be honest with you, I see it as such a tool to divide people, to keep them in fear, that I want to show them that it's simply just a tool. And if we decide to give it all the value in the world, make the most valuable thing in the world, it will not come abundantly to us.
Yeah.
And so, to be honest with you, Justin, I'm really trying to still best articulate why this is the case. But I feel like over my lifetime, I'll get incredibly clear on how money flows and how at any time we can attract it and flow to us, just like everything else, just like quality relationships, health, business endeavor, like whatever it is, we can attract anything we could ever want.
Yeah. I think it's like sometimes we place money or some other things like on a pedestal, and then we create this mindset that it's like, oh, it's so hard to reach that. And then therefore we stun ourselves of being capable to reach that. So I think
Yes,
that kind of describes what you were talking about earlier.
most definitely. If it's on a pedestal, you probably can't reach it.
Yeah.
But if it's right next to you, of course you can reach it.
Yeah.
So if you just put money like on the same level as you, like, oh, I can get that, or below you, like, yeah, of course I can do it. Then you
Yeah.
will.
hmm Yeah. Wrapping up with some questions, I wanted to ask, where do you see your life going on from now in like a few years' time? Or is it just like whatever life comes to me, I'll just accept it and go with the flow?
It's definitely the latter. I'm living this
Hmm.
life one day at a time, trying to be in the present. But to be honest with you, I think I have a unique gift where I've always had visions of what my life will look like years from now. And it's not me envisioning it. It's not me trying to manifest it and write it down and make sure it happens. It's literally just like kind of like milliseconds of my future. And so I see myself on stage, public speaking. I see myself having a wife and kids. I see myself doing a certain type of business. I see myself doing all those different things, and some of which are incredibly desirable and some of which aren't. But I know all of which are going to happen and take place. And I know that all I need to do is be fully present in the moment every single day and follow my intuition. And then whatever I'm supposed to do will happen. And if that means becoming the next Tony Robbins or David R. Hawkins, or if that means becoming a science teacher in Ohio, because the next Elon Musk, the next Jesus Christ, whatever it is going to come through my class and I'm going to hand him a book or have a conversation with him. It's going to change his life. Like whatever I am destined to do, I feel like signed a contract with the universe saying, I'm in. Let's do it. And so to be honest with you, I don't know. But right now the direction's feeling really good.
Yeah, man. Like I can't wait to see where you're gonna end up in, next few years. And, just following your journey has been pretty like inspirational towards me, and I'm sure for other people listening as well. Yeah. And
Thank you, my
closing
friend.
closing off with the question I always ask podcast guests for this podcast is, if you were to send one message to your 18-year-old self, what would it be?
Easy. Trust your intuition. Live your life in a way for that voice to get as loud as possible. Live your life with intention and presence and trust your intuition, and it'll bring you on the right path.
Beautiful, man. Cameron, thanks so much for being on the podcast. Like, truly honored.
Of course, man. I really enjoyed this. Let's do this again soon.
Yeah. Where can people get caught up with what you're doing online?
Yeah. So right now, I'm most active on Twitter and Instagram. That my tag is going to be at the Cameron Hogan. In the next handful of weeks, I'll be spreading across all platforms when it comes to long form videos, YouTube, short form videos, LinkedIn, all of them like that. All are going to be on the same tagline of the Cameron Hogan. But yeah, everything I do is to expand consciousness and spread these messages because I believe that's what's going to heal the world and make this heaven on earth. So yeah, you can find me there, and yeah, I'm so grateful for our time today, Justin. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I'm so grateful as well. All right, just gonna wrap it up here. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next. Peace.
Awesome.